Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the QT2 podcast series Race Recap. For this series, we've invited our athletes to come and talk about their race day experiences. We'll cover their journey to the starting lines, course details, some info on pre-race and race day logistics, travel, expenses, and more. So, our featured race for this episode is the Ironman 70.3 World Championships, which were held last month in Marbella, Spain. And for this series for this episode, we're going to welcome QT2 athletes Gretchen Cooney, Chelsea Conway, and Ryan Zelinski. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so I'm just going to get started first. Before we kind of dive into some of the more race-specific details, I just want to hear from each of you what your journey was to get to the starting line. What race did you qualify in, and anything that you think is sort of an important thing to share about how you got to find yourself at the starting line in Marbella. So, Ryan, why don't we start with you?
So um I had a torn meniscus last year, and I was lucky not to have to get surgery or anything major done to it. I kept training and just doing workouts lightly. So this race and just being able to run in general just has a different meaning to me now. And being an exercise science instructor at the college level, I always stress to my student athletes, how important it is to recover and make sure, the injury in itself is looked at by a professional, etc. So just that alone was a win for me, just being able to still race and run, and just how thankful I am for, the blessings that we're giving. So that in itself was the major win for me. I, I was happy that I could get a few solid months of training in uh, once the injury had, you know, subsided. Uh, it wasn't, it wasn't as much as we want, because you want to go a couple years, 10 years, 15 years without an injury, obviously. No, that's a huge damper. And fortunately, with the difficulty that we face with the sport in itself, we go through things like that. So mentally and physically, we have to be very, very strong in order to overcome the obstacles that are in the way. So that was the major win in itself. And as far as qualifying goes, I qualified for this race in Eagleman, Maryland, so earlier in the summer, and it it went well. I had a normal time, relatively normal, to where I usually am with 70.3s, and then I went to Spain and rode on that course. And it's by far it's the hardest bike course I've ever done by a landslide. So it was a great experience, and I'm very, very fortunate that I was able to go and experience everything over there in the culture.
All right, awesome. Well, we will come back to talking about the bike course a little bit later today. All right, Gretchen.
So I qualified at 70.3 Texas in Galveston. It was the third time I had done that race and the third time that I qualified for Worlds at that race. Um, in 2023, I did it and I won my age group, so I got a slot to Finland. In 2024, I was second, but there was a women for tri slot, so I was able to get a slot for New Zealand. And then this past year, again, I was second to the same woman who I was second to in 2024, a former professional. And I didn't realize until after the race was over that there was again a women for tri slot. So I was able to get that second slot. One of the reasons that I like Galveston and I selected it is it's the same weekend as Oceanside. And so I think a lot of the like super speedy people go to Oceanside for a variety of reasons. So, I always sort of felt like there might be better opportunity in Galveston. So that was how I got there.
Yeah, strategic decision. But again, that course, like each,
Sometimes
and I
that's what
mean,
you got to do.
right, totally flat
Although it
course.
was super windy
Yeah.
this year and really, I mean, you expect Texas to be warm. I was wearing my kit, a long sleeve shirt and a jacket and gloves, and did not take my hands off my handlebars, did not go in the aero bars at all because it was so windy. And there were a lot of people between the cold and the swim being canceled who just didn't start at all. So it was a big confidence booster for me.
Mhm.
Now I know I can ride in, 30-mile-an-hour crosswinds. So,
There you go. All right, Chelsea.
Well, similar to Ryan, I had an injury last year, to the point where the doctor suggested that I stop running completely. And like most triathletes, I'm pretty stubborn and said that I'll eventually work my way back to it. And I was fortunate enough to qualify at Western Mass I think last June. And they actually had to cancel the swim for that race, so it was just a bike run. And I'm predominantly pretty strong in hilly runs, and I would call it kind of a rolling course. So had a very solid run that day and was able to grab a slot there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So that 203, you had your swims canceled. I guess that's just something that has happened more for,
yeah,
I mean,
I did
yes.
Western Mass as well. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
so I did three 70.3s this year, and two out of the three swims were canceled.
Just swims. Okay. All right. Okay. So before we talk too much about the course, I want to talk about the logistics of getting to Marbella because it's not a big airport at all. So I want to like just maybe Chelsea because you came from a fairly small town, right? I mean, not Rochester's not small, but it's it's not like a metropolitan airport in the same way. So how long did it take you to get there and get back? And what did you have to, what were the logistics of finding your way there?
Yeah, so we left kind of the Tuesday before, knowing that, right, you're a day behind essentially by the time you travel. So we got in kind of midday on Wednesday, but we had to fly to a major city, in the US and then to Germany and then to Malaga. So just other than, decently long flights, it wasn't terrible. We had a bike case that we had to pack and bring that way, but then we picked up a rental car in Malaga and then drove to Marbella, which was about a 45-minute trip. So um, just a long day, not terrible from a logistics standpoint, just a long day of travel.
Yeah. And then coming back, it seemed like it was even longer. I don't know. When I was looking at, it, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, these flights are long.
Coming back was also challenging because we had bike issues. So our bikes went missing with a lot of other athletes. I don't know if um, hopefully, yeah, Gretchen and Ryan didn't have the issues we went through, but I think we were about 2 weeks before we got our bikes back, and dealing
Mm,
with the airlines was not the easiest because they didn't know where our bike was. So moving forward, my biggest piece of advice is, get a tracking tag to put in your bike case because the airlines just could not handle it, and unfortunately, the Malaga airport could not handle it.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that that's always the trick is that when you're flying into such a small airport and so many people are coming in at the same time, I mean, you can only fit so many bikes on a flight.
Yep.
So,
I
but
mean,
you
they
all
had
had your bike there. You at least got it there for
yeah.
the race,
I mean,
right?
they had a similar issue with Finland, if you remember, Chelsea, but back in when Finland took place, they still had tri-bike transport. So, those of us that use tri-bike transport is getting our bike there and back. But I think what compounded the problem in the Malaga airport was, everybody was bringing a bike. So,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And then maybe Ryan, I'll start with you on this one, just in terms of like where did you stay? Is it a hotel, Airbnb?
I stayed at a hotel. It was about 20 minutes outside of Marbella.
Okay.
So the morning of, actually, and it was beautiful. It was right on the ocean. The morning of, I went to go. It was around 5 a.m. The race started at 8, and I went to go get my Uber that I had scheduled, and it wasn't there. So apparently my app wasn't working, and it was about an hour that I had to wait on once I actually got the Uber app working for Uber to arrive. So I'm lucky that I was up early and the race started at 8 and I had some time and I wasn't too far away and the traffic wasn't bad. Or
Yeah,
I
that's
wasn't to the race start.
And how about Gretchen? Where did you stay there?
So I'm going to put in a plug for Ken Glaw's Endurance Sports Travel. I've traveled with him to a number of international races. So they select the hotel for you, and we all stayed at the Hard Rock, which was walking distance to the start. They transported us there, but it was walking distance. They pick you up at the airport, and transport your bike to the hotel. And they had a particularly difficult time this year because, when people's bikes were missing, they were driving back and forth to Malaga and helping people fill out the form. So, I've always had a really good experience with endurance sports travel, and it just takes a lot of the stress out of, things like what Ryan experienced with, not knowing whether there's Uber there, and, if your app isn't working. So, I so that takes a lot of the stress out of the logistics. And shameless plug, I highly recommend them.
Yeah. Yeah, I did something like that for Nice, and it just, yeah, it definitely like, here's where I want to go. Okay, here's your hotel, here's transfer, here's
Yeah.
your,
I used them for Nice. I used them for Finland. I used them for New Zealand. So yeah.
yeah, that's good. That's a good thing to have. How about you, Chelsea?
So we stayed about 10 kilometers away. So typically how I've started researching hotels, I actually put it into ChatGPT now, and I kind of put in the requirements that I want, and then it'll usually spit out a couple options, and then I'll do a little bit of research of the options. And we really wanted to stay on the Mediterranean Sea. So we kind of chose to stay a little bit further away. And because we had a rental car, it made it easy. And my husband wasn't racing. So he was essentially my Uber back and forth. And then when I dropped off my bike, I was able to, bike it there and drop it off.
Okay.
But we kind of chose to make it more vacation-y than, hey, our primary cause of going there is for the race and staying close, which in many cases, we might choose proximity, but in this case, we were in Spain and wanted to be able to see the sea.
So all the options, I mean, that's good that there were several opportunities there. And I guess at the end of the day, it's about researching it and knowing what you're getting yourself into, right? So, all right. Um, Any other kind of like issues that you had or thoughts is like you tell people you're traveling to a different country. You're traveling, I mean, many times over, there's things that are operating differently than we're accustomed to here. Any tips that you would, want to give to someone traveling either, into Spain or just more generally internationally for a race?
Um, I will I will say that because I had gone to Finland and they had similar issues with bikes getting there and back in Finland, I originally planned to arrive on Wednesday and then changed my plans. Unfortunately, it's going to cost a little bit more to stay another night, but I intentionally did that just in case my bike got lost for a day or two. When I did Ironman Austria a number of years ago, they were having the same issue in Klagenfurt. So, a lot of these airports that just can't handle the number of bikes that are coming. Unfortunately, sometimes that means you just have to go earlier, to give yourself an extra day or two for your bike to get there.
Yeah.
The place I stayed was called Playa Real, and I mean, if I would ever go back to Spain, I would stay there. It was beautiful, and it was very cost efficient, very very much so, and it was very clean. I had no issues at all with the hotels. So if you are ever in Spain, it's a beautiful place and it's in a beautiful area.
Yeah, I think
Nice.
the only thing for me to note would be the parking situation over there because we rented a car and we had two bikes with us. So, we had a pretty big car and, you're driving in some cases on small European roads that they don't have an easy parking situation. It's a lot of street parking. So just kind of take note of that. For American athletes, we're used to bigger parking spots, ease of finding places. It was kind of similar in Finland, right? Is typically they don't have the large cars over there that we're used to, so everything's kind of more compact.
Mhm. So, arrival. Gretchen, you said you arrived on Wednesday, and your race was on Saturday. Oh
Yeah,
no,
I actually
Chelsea, you
arrived
arrived
on
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 Wednesday. You
Tuesday
arrived on Tuesday.
for
Yep,
a Saturday
for a
race.
Saturday race. And Ryan, when did you arrive?
I arrived on Thursday, and obviously my race was on Sunday.
Yeah.
Hey, I would have obviously liked to go on a couple days earlier, but with work and everything, I ended up planning it all out, and it worked. Got there, got checked in, so it was all good.
Yeah. And how was the like all the check-in process? Any issues with that?
I didn't have any issues, and I know there was a big shortage with uh, the airport employees at the time, and I haven't followed what's going on now, but I know when we were going over there, there were all kind of canceled flights, so I didn't have any issues going there or back. There was obviously a planned layover in Amsterdam. So I actually stayed in a hotel. So that was an experience, but
Okay.
it was worth every penny of it because I got a solid 10 hours of sleep before I left to fly back home.
All right. And how about like just, getting in the expo? What was the expo like at 70.3 and the check-in process and like into race day? I
I
don't
always
know.
I
think
oh,
that
go ahead, Chelsea.
I always think the World Championship expos are phenomenal. So I always like to get there early. That was the first thing we essentially did when we came into town. For those that are newer into the sport, you want to buy the gear and the sizes go quickly. So, factoring that in, don't go the day before because they're going to be sold out. But they had a great turnout, I thought, of support vendors. The tent was great. I thought the packet pickup was very smooth, but I also went, 15 minutes before it closed, so I can't speak on going, during the busy hour, but I'm always impressed with how they run that.
I mean, I thought the expo was bigger and better than other 70.3 Worlds expos. I thought the number and the variety of vendors was really great. So I thought and I thought the quality of what they were offering was better. I mean, they're starting to work more with Lululemon. Faraday had some products there. And closer to the race, I think they were running out of sizes, but I didn't go until probably Wednesday, and they still, and oftentimes, I'm an extra small, and oftentimes all the extra smalls are gone. So I thought the expo and check-in was very smooth and, much better than I've seen at other 70.3 Worlds.
So it did feel like when you showed up, I'm at a world championship. I think
Yeah.
sometimes it does more than others. It did at this one.
Really
Yeah.
nice. I thought it was really nice. Everything was very well organized, set up. And if you needed anything, it was there. Food, any kind of gear, so bike services, etc., which is always nice when you're not in a familiar area.
Yeah. Did you find, I mean, Gretchen, you've participated in, I say 8 70.3s and two times in Kona, so 10 Ironman based world championships. Did you feel that this was more international or similar, or like, did you get any sense there?
Um, I mean, it felt very international to me, and I think my experience has been that they all feel very international, which I love. I mean, I love walking around and, I don't speak a second language, but I love that, there's all sorts of different languages and, you can sort of, um, sometimes t t tell what cultures people are from. So I thought it felt very international.
Yeah. And okay, so you all, I mean, arrived early enough. At least you weren't screeching in the day before or anything. Did you participate in like any of the pre-race activities? Was there a pre-race swim here or any kind of course previews or anything that you tuned into?
I mean, so endurance sports travel generally, and including this year, they'll arrange to do a van tour of the bike course. So I did participate in that. I didn't see that there was a practice swim like there is in Kona, for example. Although I did, do a practice swim, and one of the people working for endurance sports travel was a triathlete from the area, so he did some actual bike recon. So I participated in. It wasn't actually on the course, but it was more just to make sure that my bike was working correctly. There was a parade of nations. I did not participate, and there was a pre-race athlete dinner, which I have to say, I felt like it was more disappointing than in other worlds. And there was a lot of, very sort of bright lights. And I was sitting with a friend of mine who has a seizure condition, and she had to leave. So I thought the athlete dinner was not as good as I've seen in other races.
Yeah, I'd heard that. I think it sounds like you're actually being quite kind about it for some of the stuff that I've heard.
I'm trying to be gentle and kind.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I'm man, listen though, they heard it, so it's okay.
yeah. At 70.3 Worlds in St. George, the dinner was absolutely, or no, it was a breakfast. It was amazing, and I wasn't able to go to anything in Spain just because of the kind of the crunch time and just getting everything ready for the race and mentally and physically ready for the race. So I wasn't able to attend anything, but obviously I think it's a great thing that they have it,
Hmm.
international sport, and I know they have a kids race as well. So I did see some. We were down in town just kind of getting some things ready, and it's always good to see the younger generation getting to be there with their parents or guardians or whoever's there with it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's talk about race day a little bit. So maybe Chelsea, I can kick you off with you can talk about just getting to transition in the morning and how that worked and if that was, any complications with that. And I'm assuming you did all your bike setup and everything the day before. So what did race morning pre-swim look like for you?
Um, Honestly, it went smoothly, so that's that's always good to say. I feel like it calms the nerves before, but I thought that, we didn't have that far of a walk. You had a little bit of a walk, by the time you checked on your bike, but um, uh, honestly, one of the smoother ones where you didn't have to walk very far, like in Finland, there was actually you had a pretty far walk for transition areas, which you had to go that much earlier because of it. But like all races, my only complaint is rate the porta potties. There's never enough porta potties. But I think the only thing that to be aware of is there was a lot of spectators on the walk to the start for the race. So you're kind of battling the crowd just to get there, and it's not the other athletes. It was people. It was the spectators watching it. So just being cognizant of getting there early enough, which I think most athletes do a good job with that, but that was something I did not factor in is that you're navigating a narrow little walkway and walking with a lot of spectators and athletes to get there.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting. A lot of time they'll kind of hold the spectators or keep separate channels or something. So
yeah, I
yeah, I'm not
mean,
sure that's
it's interesting because I mean, the last couple of worlds that I've done, they even let the spectators into not the final swim corrals, but like where we were sitting before we actually went into our corral.
Hmm.
Little weird. I mean, it wasn't horrible, and I guess because I had experienced it before, um I was sort of ready for it, but
Okay. So, Ryan, when you talked about earlier about race morning and having to get an Uber. So,
Oh
how
yeah.
much time did you have actually once you showed up to get your stuff together? And did it work
Oh,
out okay?
up early, obviously. I like to wake up early just to make sure I'm ready and eat. And obviously we all have a routine. And I was expecting it to be there at 5. It wasn't, so I waited for a few minutes and then I pulled out my laptop and just had to set everything up from a different credit card and everything. And finally was able to get a hold of Uber, and someone was there around 6 a.m. So I arrived at the race. It was close to 7, 6:40, 6:45. And luckily I kind of knew where I was going just because we'd been there with,
Hmm.
setting up the day before, and was able to get in and out of the bike set up quickly or for the run
Hmm.
into the bike, and was ready to go for the swim. So that was the main thing.
Yeah.
And once I got the app to work, it was everything was smooth sailing. So it was just a little frustrating there at first. Well, there was actually one point for about 20 or 25 minutes where I didn't think I would even make it to the starting line from the hotel because nothing was working and nothing was going through. And then it went through, and someone from the app messaged me and they said they'll be there in 15 minutes, and then everything was good.
Nothing like a little extra pre-race stress, right?
I guess.
I've had times like that too, where I was like, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to start. And somehow, though, that takes away the stress on the race. You're so thankful just to be there. Then you're like,
Yeah.
okay,
Um,
I did the hard part. Yeah. So this swim, how was it set up? Was it like a age group master, age group wave? How did it work out for the swim?
age group waves.
Okay. So, yeah,
same,
that's that
same,
part.
same, same with the male waves. It was age group
Age
wave.
group wave, but was it rolling or everyone
Rolling.
It was
rolling in?
Yeah, self-seating rolling.
Self-seating rolling.
I
But then
think I think we went like
how many did you have in your age? This is a pretty big race, right?
huh, I had
3,000?
I had 62 start in my age group, and 22 did not finish.
wow.
So now older women, I mean, like a very good friend of mine, I was with her in this at the swim start, and it was a chilly morning, and she was already shivering while we were waiting to go into the water, and so she ended up DNFing after the swim because she was hypothermic. Um, an unusually large number in my age group because I'm 65 to 69. So, like, I'll go to races where there's five of us. So, 62 was a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And Ryan, you must have had what, a cup two, 300 in your age group? How many did you have?
300. I mean, it was huge, and obviously I didn't place myself in the front of the pack or anything. I know I'm not the strongest swimmer, so I wasn't even touching that. And just getting there, just getting there, and getting to the right place, and the amount of time that I needed to from where I had kind of warmed up and everything was a task in itself. But once I saw our blue caps, I was good. And I was somewhere in the middle. So there were easily, I would say, over 300, closer to 400
Yeah.
in the 35 to 39 age group.
Yeah, and Chelsea, you're nodding. It sounds like you had a similar experience out there.
Yeah, I'm in the 35 to 39 age group as well, and I believe there was just under 300. So it's always a lot, but I don't typically like to seed myself very much towards the front. I'm more towards kind of the back third that I like to seed myself because I think the athletes are a little bit calmer. They're not going out guns a-blazing, and I feel like if I don't go out with the lead group or pat you know trying for a crazy fast time because the swim is not my strength. I just settle in better to the swim. And if I settle in with confidence, then, my heart rate isn't elevated.
Yeah. And once you got going, did you feel that the swim was overly crowded or did it feel okay?
I thought it spread out pretty good. Obviously, it always gets tight when you're turning in the buoys. I think the one thing a lot of athletes didn't realize is that there was a little bit of a tide or current going one way. So your times going one direction were a little bit slower than the other direction. And I swam the day before and kind of noticed that. So, when you're looking at your splits and they're 2 minutes slower going one way, that was
Mm.
something that made a lot more sense because I had experienced it the day before. But I think you sometimes see athletes out there, that start to get worried when they see slow times. But I think there is an advantage of getting in the water, even if it's not in this at the same course. So when I got in the water, it was where my hotel was the day before, but I just got comfortable in the water. So by the time I did enter the water, I knew what to expect temperature wise, which it was a little bit of a cooler race. Um, and so for somebody that's used to swimming in upper 70-degree temps, I could see them not enjoying it as much. But I think once you get going, you kind of settle into it.
Okay. And so what was generally like the swim? Was it just an out and back loop? What was the Gretchen, maybe
It
just
was
describe?
sort of a out, make a turn to the left, make a turn to the right. It was sort of L-shaped.
Okay.
Um, and there were some pretty big swells for the women. My husband was saying that he overheard people saying, well, the course was long. I mean, based on my watch, the course wasn't long, but it was slower because of the swells and the current and a little bit of wind and waves. It was not an easy swim, but I spent a lot of time open water swimming in the summer. And the swim is my strength. Um, you know, it, I mean, I enjoyed the swim and the temperature didn't bother me. Again, because, I'm used to swimming in, sort of cooler water. Um, I liked the swim.
So you finished the swim, you liked the swim, and then the bike. Why don't you kick off on describing what the bike course was like?
Me?
Gretchen. Yeah.
Oh, um, you know, there were a number of people who I was staying with who had done the Ruvi course. I didn't. Um, I feel like I was mentally prepared for the difficulty of the climbs. Um, so the climbs didn't bother me at all. I was kind of having fun with the climbs, and I brought my road bike and put aero bars on. The difficulty for me was on the descents. I'm a huge chicken on the descents. I'm not very heavy. My road bike is a lot lighter than my tri bike, and there were some pretty significant crosswinds up at the top of the first climb. So that was for me the descents were the more difficult part versus the climbs, and then like the last descent, um, which I mean I can't remember how many miles it was, but um, again because I'm a chicken, I was trying to stay over to the right so that people who were going faster could pass me, but the road conditions over to the right were pretty choppy. I just need to get more. I have a friend who keeps telling me speed is your friend, so I have to trust that.
Yeah. I mean, this course had what, 7,000 feet of climbing,
Mm.
something like that. It was it was a lot. I mean, so what goes up must come down. Um, so Chelsea, I heard you aren't such a huge fan of the bike course. Maybe you can
Yeah,
describe what you thought of it.
I did not like the bike course. I don't think there's enough curse words to describe my feeling towards it. Um, but I also, this is on me, didn't realize how hilly it was until maybe 6 weeks before. Because when I had qualified, they hadn't posted the course yet, and I just hadn't done my research. So, I think, oh, it's along the coast, my simple mind, it's going to be a beautiful flat ride. And then 6 weeks before, I learn how much elevation gain. Now, in all fairness, I was training also for the Chicago Marathon. So I was almost dual training for two things. So this wasn't my primary focus for a fall race. So that's probably why I hadn't paid as much attention to the elevation that I normally would have. Um, but it was mentally and physically grueling, because, you usually, what your pace is, on, flat or rolling courses. And I just remember looking at the distance I had gone after an hour and just saying, that's all I've done. Oh my gosh. And just mentally thinking that. And then, I'm doing the math in my head of how long the bike course is going to take me. I think that actually the mental block was worse than the physical block at that point. Because it was a grueling hour that you're basically just climbing with maybe one small break in there. And at this point in the year, I hadn't done a lot of outdoor training. The weather had started to turn in upstate New York, and it starts to get dark. So I had done a lot of indoor training. And right, it's most of the US, I'm not saying all of it or North America, I should say, most of it is not equipped for European courses and climbing like that. So even if I wanted to find a mountain like that to bike, I'd have to drive hours to go around here. So it was very, very draining to do that course. And honestly, I think the downhill was equally as mentally draining, because yet again, I'm not used to going on tight turns and biking at full speed. So my confidence wasn't quite there. And I would love to try that course again with actually practicing on similar conditions. I think next year, I imagine it's going to be very similar for anyone that's going. So
Yeah.
just making sure that you're comfortable handling your bike, not just uphill, but downhill as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the Nice course, always for the full, was very technical. And that was, the downhills were harder than the uphills, I think, on that course. So,
Even for 70.3s when they were in Nice in 2019. I mean, I thought Nice was more difficult. I thought the climbing was more difficult and the descents were far more technical. I mean, they were scary. I mean, I have no interest in going to 70.3s in Nice this year. So that'll free me up to do a marathon in the fall.
there you go.
Yeah, I finished the race and said the same thing. I said, I'm not doing this next year. I'm not going to try to qualify. I'll wait a year and decide what I want to do the following year. But that was my mentality after this race. And usually I'm pretty mentally tough, and this one was soul sucking.
Yeah, with the difficulty. Yeah, I guess it's in Nice next year and then 2 years later. So
Yeah.
we'll see where it is in between there. Um, Ryan, you also, I think, said the bike course was something that was a bit of a challenge for you. So what did you? And I think with the men too was like they're always crazier out there than the women are. Although I
Hey,
don't know, young European women are pretty nutty. But Ryan,
Yeah.
what was your take on the bike course?
well, just responding, you had a ton of daredevil type mentalities that they had no fear at all. And in my mind, I'm just thinking, I want to be able to get off this bike course and be able to run still. So that was my mentality. And I didn't kill myself on the climbs. I felt comfortable. I didn't want to, gain a few minutes here and there and then not be able to run, obviously. And the same mentality somewhat with the descents. I didn't want to wipe out or anything, and you very easily could have. there was one point I know on one of the climbs where there was just a drop off right off the side, and it was 1,800 feet at least. I mean, maybe probably more than that, and it was just a little space, a little thin guardrail, and then a drop off. And if you lost your focus for 3 seconds, you're going up a hill, and you could have just fallen off a cliff, literally. And this is while you were climbing. So just picture that descending. It was very difficult. And the same thing, you could have, it was, and the races I've done in the past, the difficulty wise, that with climbing and everything, I would say Lake Placid, Coeur d'Alene, and then when 70.3 Worlds were in Austria 10 years ago, those were the hardest courses, and I would say that I've done, and I would say this was a little bit harder than those three. I have not been to Nice, but now that I'm aware that it's more difficult in Spain, it would make me think a little bit harder about if a qualifying time were to occur.
Yeah, I mean it's different riding in Europe versus riding in the US, and the types of hills that we have here, the switchbacks and how tight they are. And I think that one of the things that makes it so complicated is that people who are comfortable with those conditions or who are reckless, anyway, they're flying by you, and it's like someone coming in from, I don't know, middle of Nebraska and driving in New York City. It's like you have to sometimes, being cautious is dangerous, but hold on tight. So, but I'm very happy you all made it through the bike course. No crashes, everything's safe. Run time. All right, this is the fun part, right? Yeah. All right, Chelsea, talk about the run course.
I love the run. That's typically my favorite part. I actually love this run, other than being in pain from the bike. I thought the run was beautiful. To be able to spend 2/3 of the race running along the Mediterranean Sea is just phenomenal. The temperature was great, better than, the summer races where you're running in 80, 90-degree temperature, at noon. I was very impressed with everything, and it was a very spectator friendly course. So if you had spectators, you could see them many times. I thought the aid stations were fabulous. They had them all over. People were very good at handing out water or whatever, and just language wise, they were also very good. The volunteers, were very clear on what they were handing out, which I didn't know what going into it, just assuming they were going to be Spanish speaking volunteers, but they were very clear, had no issues questioning what they were giving. But I really enjoyed the run. Outside of, I had stomach issues just coming off of the bike, just nutrition wise. My stomach gave out at one point in the bike, so that's always painful going into a run when you're already having issues. But I think what saved me was the fact that the temperature was actually conducive to, okay, we can fight through this and hold on as much as possible.
So was that the temperature, was that about what was expected, or was it cooler than normal?
Range they had said it was typically in, but you got a little bit of a breeze off the sea as well, which I think really helped. Which sometimes when you're doing runs in the city or on streets, you get the heat coming off of the ground. Whereas it was nice because some of the path was right next to the sand, and I think some of it I would almost say would be sandy-esque, almost like I wouldn't say gravel, but it was similar to sand that you were running on for part of it, but harder.
Yeah. Yeah. So Brian, what do you think of the run course?
I absolutely love the run. It's up there with probably one of my top favorite run courses I've done, and I've completed a lot of races on the Ironman circuit. So, it was absolutely beautiful. You were looking at the ocean you had two loops, and you had an ocean view, I would say, for it. What do you two think about at least 3 or 4 miles, maybe more? Because there was one part where you were just straight along the shore, as as Chelsea was saying, and then there was another part where you went out on a dock and you did a loop, and you were out in the water. It was awesome. You had a view. You were out in the water. You had yachts to the right of you, about 100 or 200 yachts that kind of just gave you a really cool spectacle while you're finishing up, a big race that you worked hard to get to. I actually had a pretty decent run time for myself, so I was very happy about that coming off the bike, which was obviously not, you know, the fastest time ever, but I was glad that I, paced it a little bit slower than typically on the bike, so I was able to run. I've had issues where you're not feeling well and your stomach's hurting, you're hungry, and I've been there many times, so I get that, and it happens. Fortunately, with this race, um, I felt pretty good nutrition wise, and uh, didn't have any issues as far as nutrition goes, and it was relatively flat the entire course. Really, you only went up a couple small hills. That was really it, and they were short. And there were a couple sections where you had the scaffolding that they make with for crosswalks and everything. You went over a couple of those, and just being tired and with other athletes, just didn't want to fall off that or get into anything and rip your tracksuit or anything. So that was something that was going through my head. And I agree, the nutrition was great. The drinks and the all
Yeah,
the
I want to ask about that because there's precision hydration, which Ironman's now announced is going to be used now in the US races going forward. So it's a good product, I think. Did they have just the liquid precision and then the gels they had Morton's there?
Yep.
Yeah.
yes.
They work pretty well together. I mean, in terms of their
Yeah,
sodium, yeah, content. And it was
Yep.
the no calorie precision. Yeah.
Yeah.
yes.
I wish they'd go back to a product that had more carbs, but
Yeah.
it is what it is.
The
Yeah.
Gator, yeah.
I mean, it's interesting with precision. I mean, it's like if you use the whole package, you can get a nice carb mix. I mean, it makes sense. It's kind of weird when you start blending. Like Morton's not bad with it, but it doesn't supplement quite as well as if they use the precision gels or blocks or something like that. But yeah, I was talking to Tim actually about the precision thing. I was like, I wish they'd do the calorie stuff because precision has carb based. I mean, they have no problem with that. And I don't know why they don't. Maybe it's an expense thing, but it's still, it doesn't bother. I don't know. I never found it bothered my stomach at least to take it. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not afraid to do the Coke on the run, so I do get some carbs from that, and I know that I can tolerate it. So
yeah. You've been racing long enough, right? Make it work.
yeah, exactly, exactly. I mean, and not so much in a 70.3, but in a full Ironman. I'm just so tired of. I mean, it's hard for me to tolerate more carbs on the run, so I try to do it with gels.
Yeah. So, was there anything about this race or about the course that you was harder than you anticipated it would be looking at it? I mean, bike course, anything else like when you look and you probe it? Because I mean, I think Iron Man does a great job putting out the stuff and putting out the details of the race and giving you the pictures of the profile and can do the courses, on your bike and everything. But then when you show up on race day, it's it's different. I mean, I get maybe just ask about the bike course specifically. Was that more challenging than you anticipated it to be based on what you knew going into the race?
I would say.
Challenging.
I mean, I don't think Ryan and Chelsea will agree with me, but I mean, I was ready for 6,000 feet of climbing over 56 miles. And so I actually felt better about the bike course than I expected to. For the run course, everybody had said it's pancake flat. It wasn't pancake flat. And I hate when they when they do those ramps. They did that in Finland too. I think we had to climb it 3 times, Chelsea, at least. I'm like, why can't the spectators go up and over the ramp? Why do we
Yeah.
have to go up and over the ramp? So, but yeah, I mean, I don't have any issues with the course that they chose. I mean, it's not unusual for them to change the bike course and make it more difficult for worlds. So, I was not surprised that they did that.
Yeah.
And I like to climb, so I just have to get braver on the downhills.
Yeah,
There you go.
I'm up for anything in a race. This is why we do it. We're up for the challenge. Um, it was I knew it was going to be challenging, and I was very fortunate that 2 days before the race, I did a ride similar to what the course was going to be on. Not very, obviously not that distance, but it was nice, even though it wasn't on the course, to get, hey, this is kind of an indication of what the roads are going to be like. This is kind of similar to what the grade is going to be like. Um, so I knew it was going to be challenging, but there's nothing like experiencing it during the race where, you start to break down and, you're halfway through and you just need to give yourself a little pep talk. You need to give yourself some nutrition to get back there. Um, but never before have I thought 3% grade is flat. And right now, like if I'm writing 3% grade, I'd be like, oh, this is so easy. So there is something about coming out of the race and saying, wow, this is a great feeling to think that, a slight hill is just pancake flat.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I was, it's like you climb a lot of hills, you train on hills, and then the flat feels better. And it's like, yeah, makes you stronger no matter what. I mean, was the bike course pretty at all? I mean, was it,
It was beautiful.
yeah, okay. So I had that.
Yeah.
How about, was it crowded? Did you feel like it was crowded out? I mean, Ryan's kind of talked about the men's course, but what do you think about and for the women's course? Did it feel too crowded with the out and backs? I mean, because that's interesting to have out and backs on the same stretch. And was that off-putting at all, or was that safe enough?
I didn't feel like it was crowded, but it was definitely, I mean, it's a good thing that they weren't handing out penalties for drafting because I felt like particularly on the climbs, it was like one person after another, after another, after another. And I don't know. I mean, the swim waves were pretty far apart. I think there were 8 minutes between the swim waves. So I don't know what they can do to spread it out a little bit more, but so I wouldn't consider it crowded, and I didn't see a ton of like intentional drafting. There was some, there always is. Um, so yeah, I mean, I didn't feel like I was crowded, like I maybe have felt in other races, but it was definitely difficult to keep 6 bike lengths between you and the person in front of you.
So you said they weren't giving out drafting penalties, though?
I didn't see a single crash and I didn't see a single person in a penalty tent. So, yeah. Yeah, I didn't feel like they were giving out any drafting penalties.
Yeah. I think they usually give a pass for going uphill. I guess, well,
Yeah,
where would you give them out? If you're either going up or you're going down.
exactly. Exactly. Oh,
Like I think as an athlete, it would have been very challenging to say, I'm gonna back off 6 bike lengths if somebody's passing me in the uphill. Because
Yeah.
there was points where you could not stop pedaling. And that was a lot of it where you're just grinding through and pedaling and you're not, you couldn't take a break. So just it, you know, I understand the rules, but I just think it would have been very unfair because on an uphill, right, you're not gaining when you're going uphill at 10 miles per hour by being behind someone. And I didn't see anyone intentionally doing it. Everyone's grinding it out and just trying to make it uphill.
Yeah. Yeah. How about for you, Ryan? Anything that was different than what you expected it to be?
Well,
going?
I thought with ours on Sunday, I thought the bike course was very congested, and you could kind of get an idea when you were going up the hills and you would make a big turn and just kind of get a glimpse over your shoulder of, what was behind you, what was ahead of you, and what you were going to have to face on the downhills, because you had you had a whole lot of people that wanted to fly past you. And on that last descent, I just let them go. That was my, and I came up with that philosophy towards the end of when you would go before the first turnaround, because you would get to the end of the first turnaround, and then obviously had to go and do the whole entire course in reverse order. So that was up ahead. That was kind of my game plan. Just take it easy, let people pass, and I don't want any kind of collision or anything going out. That was the main thing, and just get to the run course in one piece. That I was just happy to survive it. Honestly, I thought it. I thought it was very challenging. I mean, I live here in West Virginia, and we have some hills. I live on a hill, and I'll run it and go on the bike all the time. There's potholes that I have to go around. I don't know if that's good, but for training, it's you have to stay focused, obviously. And when you have 10 or 15 people in a pack flying by you, going probably 50 to 60 miles an hour or more, it gets a little daunting. And I would say on the climbs, and obviously on the climbs, but also on the descents, probably more than 80% of the race, I was not in my aero bars. I was just either holding on for dear life on onto my brakes, going down if I needed them just in case, or just onto the sidebar.
Yeah. All right. So really open-ended question now. Anything that we haven't talked about today that you would like leave as parting words, any advice to someone if the race does come back to Marbella in the future, or just similar like European courses, any kind of, words of wisdom you want to share?
I mean, for me, there have been a number of worlds that I've done where, because of my son's school schedule, we had to do the vacation part beforehand. And so I always sort of look at these worlds races as, the icing on the cake. And I'm just grateful to have the opportunity. I mean, my new mantra is do triathlon, see the world. So I just always feel really grateful that I have this opportunity, and it is a very cool way to see the world. And so, there was a woman who in Galveston, and she's in her 20s, and it was the first time that she had done a 70.3, and she got a slot. And I'm like, you got to take it, because it's just such a cool opportunity. So, that's sort of my words of wisdom and advice is, grab that opportunity.
I agree, and I always uh, I played college baseball, and my whole life growing up, that was my life, and then got into triathlon, and I had never swam. I would go out on the bike every once in a while, but running, just with sports and everything, and then getting involved with that. So I'm very fortunate to be able to do this. And if if you're competing in the sport, you want to go and compete against the best. And obviously, when you go to these types of races, you're not going there to you know get a first place overall win. You're going there to compete against the best, and that's my mindset with it. And that's why I like to go, because it's a great experience.
How are you, Chelsea?
And you're going to have an uncontrollable in in each leg of the race, right? I think we can all probably say, I would have done this differently, or, I had this hit me, but I think it's all about the mindset and just saying, this is what I can control. And it's never going to be a perfect race. We're very rarely going to be a perfect race. So I think just going in and just making sure if you make a mistake or if something happens early on in the race, just kind of keep plugging. There were points in the bike where I was like, I want to pull out and I want to quit, but taking the mentality of, I qualified, I made it here, I deserve to be here, and I'm going to fight through it. And then when you see the other athletes next to you working just as hard, knowing that if they can do that, I can also do that. And then just from the standpoint of, watching very talented athletes go by you, I think it's always just impressive and motivating. And, to be able to see Olympians like by you, and, they're returning and just say, wow, those are the best athletes in the world, and I'm here racing with them. I think that's just such an exciting mentality. And yet again, speaking with, Ryan and Gretchen, I encourage anyone to go to one of the world championships if they qualify, because it truly is really fun to see, other athletes be excited and love the sport and get out there and do it next to you.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's so wonderful about our sport is that you get to race alongside the very best in the world, whether it be in your age group or other professionals. And I just think that that is so incredibly cool. And, I don't think there's any such thing as a perfect race. I feel like I learned something in every single race. And that's one of the things that keeps me motivated is, maybe my swim and my bike are in good shape, but my run's not. So there's always something to work on.
All right, so I'm sure I will see all of you out there at another World Championship race in the future, and generally will now enjoy your off season. And thank you all for coming on today. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Reem.
Yeah.